What's up guys? So today I'm going to be hardwiring my dash cam into my car, and I figured I'd show you how I'm going to do it. Now, as a disclaimer, I'm not an electrician. In fact, I'm lucky I know the difference between an ohm, a volt, and an amp. So I'm probably not the guy to be doing this video, but I have done some research and I think I know how to make it work. So with that being said, I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, a few things. First of all, the way I'm going to be hardwiring this dash cam is not directly into my car. In fact, I'm going to be wiring a second 12-volt outlet here, which I picked this up at AutoZone for a few bucks. And actually this is getting hardwired directly into my car. And the reason I'm doing that is so that my dash cam is not permanently attached to my vehicle. So if I want to take another car on a road trip, or in the future when I go to sell my dash cam or sell my car, it's not permanently attached. It can be removed and taken to other vehicles. The second thing I wanted to mention is that this dash cam here is the Papago P3, and it has a couple features, one of which is a feature where it will turn itself on if it senses any movement or vibration in your vehicle, even after you have it turned off. So if somebody tries to break into your car or backs into you while you're parked, it will turn itself on and begin recording, so hopefully you'll be able to catch something on film. Now, another feature this has is it has a built-in power inverter in the cord. So this will take the 12 volts from your 12-volt outlet in your car and step it down to the 5 volts, which is required by this dash cam. Now, that will prevent it from getting burned out. So if you have a dash cam that does not have a built-in line converter for it, you want to make sure that you get one aftermarket and wire it into your system, so that you don't burn out your dash cam or any other accessory that you are doing this to. Okay, so before I get started here, I'm just briefly going to cover the tools and parts I'll need for this install. I will need a soldering iron, I will need solder, and this is actually fine electrical solder. There are different grades of solder, so you want to make sure that you get something that's good for electrical connections. I have my 12-volt outlet, which I will be wiring to my car. I have an inline fuse holder, and this I'm going to install very close to the battery so that if the circuit is overloaded, it doesn't burn up the entire wire. I have low amp fuses for the fuse holder. I do have a fuse kit here, but the lowest I have is for 5 amps. My dash cam is only going to take about 1 amp, so I got a low amp assortment which has, I believe the lowest is a 2 amp. I'll probably end up using a 3 amp just to make sure that I'm not overloading the circuit in any way. I will have my negative wire. This is actually 14 gauge wire. I have red wire for my positive, and I have 2 terminals here. One is going to be connected to the battery. The other one is going to be grounded to the inside of my car. I am going to attach it to a bolt very close to where this is being installed, and that will provide a ground. I have heat shrink tubing for all my soldered connections, and I have several different pliers here and a razor blade. Now, you really should be using a wire stripper, but I don't have one at the moment, so I'm going to have to resort to pliers and a razor blade, and just be careful that I don't cut into the actual wire. I also have a voltmeter here, which if you are tapping into your fuse panel or something like that, you will definitely need this. But since I'm wiring to the battery, I really don't, but it's not a bad idea to have one. Okay, so here I have my 12-volt outlet. They have included screws, but I am most likely going to securely zip tie this into a location instead of screwing this through my dashboard or something crazy. So I appreciate the screws, but I'm going to set those aside. Also, they have, looks like these press fit connections on here. I'm going to cut these off because I much prefer to have a soldered connection. And other than that, everything looks good. And here is my inline fuse holder. This opens up and your fuse pops right inside. This whole outer shell is rubber, so this will have no problem being mounted in my engine bay next to the battery, so I shouldn't have any issues with this. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to solder one of these terminals onto my inline fuse holder so that I can connect it directly to my battery. Okay, so here is the finished product, and it may not look super pretty, but I think it's going to work. So I have my positive side of the circuit. I have soldered on a terminal so that I could actually bolt this right down to the positive side of the battery terminal. I have my inline fuse, which I am popping in a 3 amp fuse, which should provide adequate protection without it overloading. I could use a 2 since it only uses 1 amp, but I just don't want it to blow unnecessarily, so a 3 will still provide plenty of protection. So just going to pop that in there, close this back up, and I have plenty of wire so that it could reach inside my passenger compartment, and I'm going to mount my 12 volt outlet underneath my dash. For the negative side of this circuit, I just added plenty of wire so that I could reach a grounding point, and I have soldered on another ground connection so that I could just slip this under a bolt and tighten it down. Now for my 12 volt outlet, all I have to do is mount it in my car, and then I'll be able to take this, which is from my dash cam, pop it in, and I'll be good to go. Okay, so before I head out to my car and actually go through the trouble of installing this, I just want to make sure that it does in fact work. Now this is meant to run off of 12 volts, which I don't have, but I do have a 9 volt battery. So I'm going to use this, and I have my dash cam right here. So let's see if this works. Now I have my multimeter right here, which I'm going to turn on. And let's see how much this battery has. Says 8.69, so it's nearly fully charged. Not quite, but it should still do the trick. I have my positive and my negative leads right here, and I'm going to take my 12 volt and plug my dash cam in, and I'm going to make sure that it's turned on. So let's see how this goes. As you can see, I have the green light that lit up showing that I have power, and the screen turned on. So this connection is working, and let's see, it looks like it doesn't have quite enough juice to keep it going. Like I said, this is about 8.5 volts right now when it's supposed to be running off of 12. But it does prove that this circuit does work and that my dash cam is working. So all I have to do now is run outside and throw this in the car. Alright, so now I'm ready to install my dash cam, and I'm going to go over everything that I have here that I'm going to need for this install. First of all, I have my 12 volt outlet. I did shorten the ground wire. I actually found a location that I can ground this to that is much closer than where I previously was going to ground it to. So I just shortened that up. But I have my 12 volt outlet. I have my ratchet with a 10mm bolt so that I could take off the ground bolt on the inside of the car. I have a pack of cable ties here. I have a Sharpie for marking out where I'm going to drill holes so that I can mount my 12 volt outlet. I have some protective wire tubing here to cover this so that I don't have any issues when I run it through the firewall. I have this grabber thingamajig here so that I can actually push it through the firewall from the inside. I have my drill, and I have my dash cam here. So now that I covered all that, I'm gonna go and install this. Okay, so right now I'm under my dash, and here's my fuse box right here, and I'm going to mount my 12 volt right to this little section of plastic. I'm choosing to use zip ties so that I don't risk them grounding out on anything in here. That's really not a good thing to happen. So zip ties will be perfectly fine and secure for attaching this. I am also going to probably put some double-sided tape on the back of this so that I have that extra security in addition to the zip ties. Here is my hood latch, and there is a bolt right here where I'm going to ground my white wire here, my -2, and the red wire I'm going to run through my firewall, and there is, if you can see it, a hole right in here. I don't know how well that's picking up, but I'm going to run it through this hole straight out to my engine bay. and that will actually come out right underneath my brake booster. So I want to make sure that I have some of that protective tubing around my wire so it doesn't get frayed or chafed in any way. And I am going to follow this power cable right up to the positive side of my battery terminal. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is, since this hole in my firewall does not have a rubber grommet, I'm going to take some of this protective plastic wire loom, and I'm actually going to wrap it around the edge of the hole so that it doesn't cut through my power cable. Now the next thing I want to do is ground my negative wire, and you are looking upwards. My hood latch is right here and my fuse box is right here. So I'm just going to pull this back, and I'm going to take my negative wire and attach it to one of these two screws, probably the innermost screw. And that is the reason that I used a ring connector here, so that I could slide this right on and then bolt it right back. Now I'm going to leave this connection loose until I actually get my 12-volt outlet fully positioned, and then once I'm sure I won't be moving it around anymore, I will tighten that down completely. Next, I'm going to position my outlet exactly where I want it and make sure that it's where I want it and that it's also straight and not crooked. And I have a Sharpie here. This is actually a metallic silver Sharpie, so it's going to show up perfectly on this black. And once I get it positioned, I'm just going to mark out these 4 positions so that I know where to drill. And now that I have my 4 holes marked where I need to drill, I'm going to drill them out, but I'm going to be very slow and very cautious when I do this. The worst thing I can do is drill into the fuse box or drill into any other wire. So I want to feel behind here first and make sure that there aren't any loose wires or metal contacts that I might hit. And I want to take it slow so that I don't go too far and drill into my fuse box. So now that I have my holes drilled, the next thing I need to do is to take my double-sided tape. This is basically double-sided tape with a foam core in the middle. It's made by 3M, and you could find it at any auto parts store. This is actually designed for attaching badges to the outside of your car, but I use this stuff everywhere, and I have never had an issue with it coming off. I've used it on my dash to hold down my wideband gauge as well as my access port mount, and I've been able to remove it without damaging my dash, but it stays very strong and holds tight, so I'm going to use that here. I'm just going to take a section and I'm going to place it in between these holes here so that I don't cover anything up. And you just peel off the backing. And now that I have that done, next I'm going to run my zip ties through the holes so that I make sure everything lines up. Now, I'm a guy who likes clean installs, so I'm going to run this zip tie in from the inside first, so that this locking mechanism here is actually on the inside of the dash and you won't see it. Now that I have my zip ties in place, I'm going to position my 12-volt outlet. Now, to make sure that this adhesive really adheres, I'm probably going to hold it like this for about 30 seconds or so, just to make sure it sets. And like I said, this adhesive is very strong, so already this is a pretty solid mount, but I want these zip ties here for added security, especially since it's going to be near my legs as I'm driving and getting in and out of the vehicle. I don't want it to come loose. So as you can see, it's a very solid connection here. This outlet isn't going anywhere, and I don't have to worry about screws or anything like that grounding out on this fuse box or penetrating anything. So now that I have that done, I can further tighten down my ground since it's not going anywhere. Now the next thing I'm going to do is run my power cable out from under my dash through the firewall and into the engine bay where I could connect it to my battery. So I have my positive terminal here, and I'm going to take this grabbing device here, and I'm going to just make sure that I clamp onto here so that I could push it through. If you don't have one of these devices, I think they're like $10, if that, at Home Depot. But you could also use a coat hanger or a piece of wire. Anything that's stiff that could push this wire through and get it around any hang-ups. So now that I have my power cable routed through my firewall, I'm going to attach it to the positive terminal on my battery. Now, I'm not actually going to remove the terminal. I'm just going to loosen this nut here, take it off, and that will allow me to slide on this connector here. And the next thing I want to do is zip tie this power cable to the main power cable that runs off of my battery so that it doesn't get hung up on anything or pulled out. So now that I have my positive wire secured to the battery, I'm going to take any excess wire that I have, I'm going to neatly bundle it up, and I'm going to zip tie it together up out of the way, and just make sure that it's not running near anything that can abrade against it or get caught in my pedals or anything like that. So this is basically just finishing up the install and making sure everything's nice and neat. So here we go, the moment of truth. And I get a green light indicating that I have power. And if you look at my dash cam, it's running. So I'm just going to mount this to my windshield and route the wire. So now I'm going to show you how I prefer to mount my dash cam. First of all, I like it to be in the center of my windshield, and I like it to be as high as possible so that it's out of my line of sight. Now this dash cam here utilizes a suction cup, so I can't put it on this sunscreen here that comes from the factory, but I can go just below it, and I'm going to place it to the right hand side of my mirror so that it is up and out of my way. And now that I have that attached and it's secure, I want to make sure that my dash cam is level and pointed straight. And once I do that, I just need to tighten down all my adjustment points. Next, I'm going to route my cord. Obviously, it's not very beneficial to have it just hanging here randomly. So I'm going to take this up here and I'm going to tuck it into my headliner and down my A-pillar. Now, since this has this little power inverter here, I'm going to wrap this once around my mirror so that it keeps it up out of the way, and then I'm going to tuck the rest of it in. So most cars have a gap between the windshield and the headliner, and that's where I'm going to stuff all this wiring. I'm just going to stick it up in here all the way across my headliner, down my A-pillar, and then I'm going to wrap it around between my door and bring it into my 12-volt outlet. It sometimes helps if you take a little loop and you twist it so that it bunches up in there. That will help it to not pull out as much. Okay, so now I have my wire tucked down my A-pillar, and it's coming out right here between my A-pillar and my dash. I'm going to take my credit card and make sure that it's fully tucked down in there. and I'm just going to follow this line right down the seam of the door. So now that I have my wire tucked away, it runs all the way down this seam right here, and it comes out at the bottom, and I'm going to neatly bundle all this excess wiring and tuck it away with the rest of the wires from this outlet. I have my other plug right here that goes right into my 12 volt, and I'm going to leave that loose so that I can plug it in and unplug it if I need to. So that's just one way to hardwire a dash cam. A lot of people tap into the fuse box. I chose to run it directly to the battery since I'm running the extra 12 volt outlet and I need constant power. So I hope you enjoyed this install. I'll catch you guys later.